Sensitivity is intelligence. With grace and skill, you have abundance. Welcome to the Psychic Hour. Host Kelly Brickle is a psychic medium healer, numerologist, and teacher. Her passions are learning about the soul and energy. Whether it's through spirit, emotion, or vibrational numbers, there's always a pathway of information waiting to help. Now, here is your host of the Psychic Hour, Kelly Brickle.
Hi, hello, welcome to the Psychic Hour. I'm Kelly Brickle, and it's a part of WLTK-DB's Let's Talk Radio, where we just go into everything psychic, mediumship, numerology, and we have our interview series today with the lovely Libby. She's an astrologer and psychic medium, and so we'll be bringing her on in a little bit to talk about her life. So if you have any questions along the way, just pop them down and we just talk and away we go. So the topic of the day, we always start with one. I thought it was appropriate with the whole hurricane that happened earlier this week. Now, it wasn't that, loco for the region. It wasn't that crazy for the region, but the energy of the hurricane was definitely in the air. So people were preparing for it. They were learning about it. They were stabilizing what energies they needed to stabilize. But ultimately, it was storm energy, and storm energy is transformative energy. It's cyclones. It moves at a speed that's unpredictable. In spirals are very sacred patterns of energy movement. And it just brings us to the question, when you find yourself in your own storm, how do you prepare? How do you have your support? Do you feel at peace? Do you know to go into the eye of the storm where the greatest amount of peace is? Whether you can get there or whether you intend to, what is your storm plan? And so I really think every year, and I talk about this a lot, I think every year we have different needs with what we need to do for ourselves to find our healing, to find our joy, to find our connection. And it's constantly changing because that's what life is. And so we might find that our needs for traversing the storm are very solo. We might find that, we've done the preparation, we've done the work, and so we feel confident to go. And we also might find that we need people in our corner. And I think both things are so important to talk about. Whether you have friends, whether you have relationships, whether you have family that can help you course, whether it's difficulties, trauma, uncertainty, confusion. It's important to have those people in your corner. Therapy is great too, or just activities where you get to release energy and come back to your peace, come back to the eye of the storm. Hello, Kevin. Hello, everyone coming on in. Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. You're talking about the storm. Yes. And yeah, a lot of people in the United States didn't get hardly hit. Some people had no power. There was kind of some earthquakes that happened in certain regions of Southern California that kind of went with that. Hello, Stephanie. And we were blessed. We were lucky. And so, yes, what is your storm plan? That's what we're focusing on. And you might find that you have certain things within your life to settle and focus your mind. I talk a lot about meditation and journaling, or you could be having a mantra, or putting more exercise into your life to focus, how your brain and your body and your energy processes things. What is it going to take for you to feel calm and harmonious? Because I think that is a question that comes up always. What is it going to take for me to feel centered and back to myself? And life is going to send us so many different spectrums of energy, whether it is chaos, whether it is something expected. Like, for instance, Mercury retrograde, that's planned, that's expected by the stars, like by the planets. We know the trajectory. And yet, even though we can plan for some of it with it being on time, we have no idea what's going to happen. Hello, Teresa. And so, how prepared can we be? Can we be prepared? Or what do we have to strengthen in our own energy to help our resolve for the surprises that come our way? And you might find that you're a person who loves diving in, like, how can I grow? How can I be better? And if that's not something that gets you out of bed in the morning, it's just a matter of how can you like simplify your life, so you can feel like, okay, I got this. I feel less cluttered. I feel less torn. I feel like my energy is not so much a mess. I think everybody wants to feel that way. And then when the storm comes in, it doesn't kick up as much stuff. When the storm comes in, it doesn't create as much destruction because things had foundation, things were bolstered, you had less scattered amongst your energy. And so, like, when it comes to our bodies, it's like, what is your routine that makes you feel centered within your body? Okay. I know that for me, like, I have to go for a walk. I have to have protein. Not everyone's the same way. With my mind, I have to meditate. I have to journal or do a form of journaling where I'll just make a bunch of like notes. I have paper, everywhere with notes and ideas, but it helps me get it outside of my brain. It helps me get it outside of my energy so I can create it, so I can be it. And I do feel like there is chaos within so many people because there's energy that is always just mixed up in them. Okay. So there's the external tornado or cyclone or hurricane or whatever energy you want to liken it to that will hit us and make us afraid and fearful. And, how do we have safety within our lives? And then there's the internal one. And it's just like, what are we doing to manage as things rise to the surface? Like some of us really hunker down and go within. And some of us need to disperse the energy and move and be active in life and, change the vibration that way. Whatever it is, you have to make sure that you don't have things swirling around in you. And like last show, we talked about release, and how important it is to make sure that you're constantly connected to what you need to release on some level. We can't be connected to everything. We absolutely cannot. Things are supposed to gently or suddenly rise to the surface as our needs come. Okay. But the the groups and the individuals that are the most ready and the most centered within their care, they have some preparedness, whether or not things are going to happen and you expect them to, again, like Mercury in retrograde, if there's a certain preparedness, and everyone does preparedness differently, your energy is like, okay, I'm ready. I feel like I saw this coming to a certain degree. I feel like I saw this coming. And that's the thing. Like we can see things coming. We can't always understand the context. Sometimes we're right on the money with the time. Sometimes we're right on the money with the subject, but we can't see everything coming. And so we know that we're in the ballpark. And I think that's like pretty powerful within itself. As long as you feel like you've met the moment with so much of, okay, all right, um, I feel like I'm centered within this to a certain degree. I think that you can draw your power there. And that's the eye of the storm energy. It's the most quiet there. Whether it happens before the storm, after the storm, during the storm, if you can find that place within and go, hey, amongst the chaos of the world, amongst the chaos of myself, because every day, we have our past or our present circumstances or the anxieties of the future gnawing at us. If we have that oasis inside of us, that peace, then we can start to construct and build and strengthen that and understand how to course correct and navigate anywhere and anything and anyone that we are connected to or a part of. It's just a matter of coming back to that place. I know that I have sanctuaries within inside myself, various prompts, various feelings, various visuals, sounds. I make it a sensory experience of what my sanctuary is, but I don't always remember to go back to my sanctuary or my various sanctuaries because we get so stressed and whatever we're in the vibration of, we become. So you could be, so strong within what you know you need, and you have fear overtake you. You have uncertainty overtake you. You just get knocked back. And no matter how much you know about your peace and your strength, you will find sometimes yourself in the energy of being knocked back on the floor. And it's just to make sure that there's always these reminders for yourself. I think that's the strongest thing. So, yes, it is powerful to have practices and for things to happen within those practices that make us feel like, okay, I got this and this is good for me. But I think the most important thing is making it a practice, because then your energy goes, you know what we usually do? Okay, you have options, because every day, every week, every month, from this habit, from this strength, that you have your options of you can do this and you can do that. And suddenly you don't feel so scattered. And suddenly that remembrance isn't so far away, because that's where the safety and sometimes the certainty is. It feels so far away. How can I get there? I know I need to get there, but I'm not able to. Is there something wrong with me? Have you ever felt like you know what peace is, but you feel so mixed up with the energies that you can't get to that place no matter how hard you try? And it's just continuing to remember, continuing to unlock, continuing to seek out more and more helpers, more and more remembrances, and making sure that is a part of you wherever you go. So, hello, everybody coming on in. We're going to be with Iris in just a moment. So stick around, and hopefully whatever inspiration you have within the storm that you're facing within your life and the feelings that you feel when you are at your peace, at your center, and the remembrances of who you are as a soul, a spirit, or when you have been in your power, what that feels like. If you can bridge all that, then, you know, that is going through storm energy, and that is radiating and admitting everything that you need on your journey. We will be back in just a moment. See you then. Hello, and welcome back, just like that. All right, let's bring Iris in. Hello.
Hi, Iris.
Hi, I want to give you a... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's so good to see you too. We're in sync. We're so in sync, we're talking over each other. Okay. It's great to see you. I want to give you a warm introduction, okay?
Thank you.
All right. Absolutely. Iris Libby, forged by the stars and manifested by her own tenacity, Iris is constantly evolving to fulfill the highest calling of her soul's purpose. As a practicing astrologer and intuitive, for the past 35 years, she has come to understand that the potentials, blind spots, and energies that guide us can only do so if we're willing to look to the skies and spirit. Like many with intuitive gifts, she was directed by others at an early age to be silent. In turn, Iris made it her life's work to listen. Previously immersed in the corporate world as an executive with the Cochrane Group and Amazon.com, she realized her gifted instincts and strong work ethic helped her to observe things unfolding just as she predicted, with fortune and success. Direct, slightly irreverent, and freakishly accurate, she is also accredited as a level 4 certified spiritual advisor by the Lisa Williams International School of Spiritual Development. Iris provides readings and guidance for those wishing to enhance their own intuition and to have direction from spirit and the universe. Welcome, Iris.
Thank you, Kelly. And thank you for inviting me today. By the way, I love the topic, your opening topic. It's so timely. And from an astrological perspective, I can explain what happened if you're interested.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Fresh out the gate. Yes, I'm very interested. Tell me.
Okay. So this is known as mundane astrology, and it's not one of my areas of expertise, but I know enough to be dangerous. So
Mundane and dangerous?
Well, I usually deal with people and relationships and emotions and things like that, but I'm gonna just talk about this briefly. But we had Neptune, who's the deity of the sea, opposing Mars, the lord of aggression and war. So there is this opposition going on. Mars is conjunct, which means next to Mercury, and Mercury rules communication and, like hot air, things like that. So you had Mars communication, blowing air. They're next to each other, Mercury and Mars, opposing the lord of the deity of the sea. At the same time, there was this there was a T square in it was in earth signs. So basically, and that was involved with this, which is why it didn't end up being that bad, because it grounded. So the T square involved Uranus and Jupiter. So if Uranus had been involved in a hard aspect to these planets, we would have been in trouble. So Uranus and Jupiter in a trine with Jupiter and Mars, and then in this trine with Pluto. So it was an Earth trine. And so it really calmed it down. So it wasn't as bad. I knew it wasn't going to be as bad as they were saying based on the astrology, but you still had to prepare, like you were talking about before.
Yes. And so when you're looking at the forecasts for a period of time, just based on the trines and the squares and the oppositions, or the certain elements at play, you can go, okay, it's not going to be chaotic, or it is going to be chaotic. How do you analyze that for the people learning more about astrology and starting their journey?
Well, it takes a while to get here, but hard. So easy aspects don't make things happen. They're easy. People get lazy under easy aspects. It's typically a hard aspect that makes something happen. So a hard aspect would be a conjunction, a square, or an opposition. A square is 90 degrees and an opposition is 180. So that creates movement. It creates movement in our lives, and it creates movement in the world.
Gotcha. And so you had planets like Mars and Pluto and Uranus, and those shake up things, but it was trined.
Yes. So yeah, Mars, Mercury, and Uranus were all trine, and Uranus was conjunct Jupiter. Now, Uranus is a planet that you're allowed to say Uranus or Uranus or Uranus because it's ruled by Aquarius, and Aquarians do their own thing. So you're allowed, all of those are correct, by the way. And Uranus was conjunct Jupiter, which means there could have been a lot of issues, but because it was in an Earth trine, it didn't happen,
We'll take it. That's what I'll say. We'll take it.
I'm very happy. Although I did experience my first earthquake, which was 5.5, and it was a little freaky for me.
How did it feel? Did you have rolling? You were closer to the earthquake, and I was in a car while it happened, so I couldn't feel it because, right, we were already moving. But what was it like? Just shaking, or did you feel the ground?
Well, the building I live in was kind of not destroyed, but it was badly damaged during the Northridge earthquake. And so they went in and retrofitted the whole building. So there was another earthquake while I lived here. I slept through it. I didn't hear anything. But this time, for some reason, about 3 hours before the earthquake, and this happens to me, something in the geometric pressure, or maybe it was my psychic ability, I started to feel very off, almost like I was going to get an ocular migraine. And what happened was I ended up I channeled 3 different messages during that time. And I was about to channel a 4th, and a friend was here with me, and she had just come over to look at me because I'm like, do I have a temperature? Because I was really feeling very strange from the barometric pressure. And just as she was walking over to me, a chandelier in my house started swinging, and the building just went like, and I looked at her and I said, this is my first earthquake. And started to laugh, of course.
Yeah, it's kind of like, whoa. It's fun. As long as it's not bad, it's actually kind of fun. At least that's how I think about it.
Yeah, I don't know if it was fun, but it was probably nervous laughter. But then when it was over, I'm like, okay, I could do this as long as it doesn't get much higher. And that was 5.5. I mean, I feel like this building will be fine, but it was my first one.
Yes, yes. And there was some aftershock afterwards, like 2 point quakes here and there that I heard, but I don't know if that was felt by you. It's oh, go for it.
I was going to say, I have a question. What were you doing driving in your car during the hurricane?
Oh, well, I had been watching it for a handful of days, and I was like, it sounds funny to say on the air like this, but I didn't, everything that I saw, it wasn't going to be bad. I had no qualms. The way that it was leaning for the past couple of days, even the same day it was reduced to a category 1, it's not going to pick up speed. There's no way it's going to get worse, so it got reduced to a tropical storm. It's just all its power is in the sea. So I just knew, like, oh, we're going to have wind.
Yeah.
All right. Or rain's going to hit. It hasn't hit yet. Might as well, get lunch. There you go.
I understand. So, plus, we're mediums. We understand that.
Yeah. With a mixture of science and intuition, there is a lot of just comfortability with some of the decisions. You know what I mean? That's why, I had no fear on it. And then we had just like, a couple leaves on the ground, our area. That, from the wind, that's it. That's all we had. No limbs down, nothing. No trees down, none of that. Easy peasy in our region. Other places, like I said, maybe had things on the road, and, the electricity went out, but that was the extent of our region. Honestly, it wasn't that bad. Even up north, it was just the power outage. It wasn't that bad.
Yeah, we moved everything off of my 2 terraces except for a bed frame and 2 tables, which we pushed against the wall. And the whole time we were doing it, I'm like, we really don't need to do it. My terraces barely got wet. They are covered. But in the middle of the night was it Sunday? Yeah, it rained harder than I have ever seen it rain. It was raining. I woke up at about 1 a.m. and it was just raining and I used to live on the East Coast where it could rain for 2 or 3 weeks at a time. So I've been in torrential rain. It was harder.
Yeah, the rain was pretty hard, definitely. They warned us about that, so I just yeah, I was good. I was like, "Let it rain, let it rain." We have a skylight in our house, and we actually had some of the water come through the skylight, and that usually does not happen. So it was raining pretty hard, definitely.
Yeah.
Um, with Mercury in retrograde, though, so like the next kind of thing that we're finding ourselves dealing with, what do you recommend people to do to prepare themselves for that storm?
Well, people look at Mercury retrograde as something to be afraid of because, we live in a world that's go, go, go. It's very fast paced. And 3 or 4 times a year, the universe says, look, you need to slow down. You need to rethink, reflect, review, reconsider. And if you don't slow down, the universe will slow you down. So what you find is, for me, I think of it more as you have to go with the flow. So when I say that, if something that's supposed to happen doesn't happen, look for what happens instead or why it didn't happen. Let me think of an example. Okay, so I was supposed to get something delivered, some clothes for an event I'm going to. They're not going to get here on time. I ordered it during the Venus retrograde, and I thought it was like, I felt like some of it would arrive, some of it wouldn't. But what happened is someone gave me a bunch of other clothing items that will work for this event. The event is Burning Man. So, you got to be
Perfect.
mom crazy, right? So, and I'm going to Burning Man during a Venus retrograde, a Mercury retrograde. Um, Jupiter and Uranus will go retrograde while I'm there. Neptune is retrograde, Saturn is retrograde, and Pluto. So there will be 7 planets retrograde. And the thing to do during that time is just to go with the flow.
Yeah. Wow. All those planets and at Burning Man, the energy is going to be very high and unpredictable.
Well, you're totally right. And the group that I'm going with, we have a motto, which is anything goes and just go with the flow. Like, we're bringing twos and threes, like I'm bringing an extra tire for my bike, extra everything I have, I'm bringing something extra in case I lose it or something happens to it. So that's a good way to prepare. But I wouldn't recommend starting a new business, going into signing a contract, um, you know, like saying, I am going to go buy a car or I'm going to go buy a new computer. It's not the ideal time to buy a new computer because computers are communication. Here's a great example. Before I started studying astrology, I bought a Honda, a red Honda, and I bought it because the cars were stable. It was an Accord. It was all souped up, and I thought I'll never have to take it to be repaired. That's what I thought.
Mm.
Nothing's ever going to go wrong with it. You can't think that about a car, especially during a retrograde. So during the first retrograde, when it went retrograde again, a truck pulling out in front of me in traffic pulled off my front bumper. One. Retrograde number 2, we used to have those Benzie boxes, which was a box that was a radio and you kind of carried around like a purse. And I was standing in front of a construction site talking to some construction workers, and I was literally less than 5 feet away from my car. And 3 kids broke into my car, stole my Benzie box, like within 2 minutes, 2 seconds. And the construction guys went running after them into Central Park, never found them. Then the third time, I was driving on the Merritt Parkway in Connecticut at night, and something fell off one of the bridges and ripped off a side of my car. Now, this is all very dramatic. I happen to be very dramatic, but at that point, I was in Connecticut. I called a friend. I go, I am never getting in this car again. It's jinxed. And it wasn't until the following year when I started studying astrology, I realized I had bought the car during a retrograde. So it was a lesson I learned.
Oh, wow. So the actual car had that energy that persisted. It wasn't just, okay, I'm driving and this is in the air right now. The car had the energy with it constantly.
Correct. I believe there are no lemon cars. There are Mercury retrograde cars. So cars produced during a retrograde. Now, so you can complete something. So say you're working on a book, right? You can, whatever you're working on, and it's a great time to finish old business, to finish things up or stuff that you haven't taken care of. It's a wonderful time to clean out drawers. I mean, people think I'm crazy, but I go on vacation during a retrograde because it's a time when I can go with the flow, unless, it's some kind of tour where I have to be places. But an easy vacation, it's a great time because, well, it might not be an easy vacation. The trick is to have no expectations. And as long as you have no expectations, it really works. Whereas with a Venus retrograde, and Venus is currently retrograde, that's a little bit different because people could come up from your past. Money issues you didn't know could come up, like all kinds of things. Am I getting an echo, or is that?
There is feedback, yes, but it's not too bad.
Is that from me? Is turning down my microphone better? Maybe that's better. Can you still hear me?
So. Yes.
Is that better?
It's on your, I believe so. I believe so. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry. Okay. Anyway, so it's a good time. Oh, with Venus retrograde, you really want to not fall in love again or start a new relationship. Any relationships you start will have that energy. It's not an ideal time to get married because it's with a retrograde, you often have to do it again. So whatever you're doing, you may, especially with personal planets, and with Venus and Mercury, if you start something new, you just might have to do it again. And also money can be delayed, love can be delayed. And with both Venus and Mercury, exes from your past can come back. And with Mercury, friends from your past or relationships from your past, they don't have to necessarily be love relationships, can come back into your life.
So things boomerang to you in a way where any unfinished business gets looked at.
Yes. Yes. Okay. And things get revealed that you did not know. And I love that about a Mercury retrograde because things will come out, and it's to raise it to your consciousness so that you are aware of things. Mercury retrograde is a great time to do research. So say you want to buy a car or you want to buy a sofa, research it, go look at them. Don't pull the trigger because something's going to come to light before you pull the trigger until the retrograde's over. Now, I am interested, or I look at the pre-phase of retrogrades and the post-phase. And I find often, so the pre-phase is about 2 weeks before the retrograde, that the pre-phase can be, for me, as bad or worse than the retrograde. But I have Mercury retrograde natally. So I fare better during retrogrades than people who don't.
That makes sense. And so, turn down your mic just a little bit more for me, if possible.
Okay. Is that good?
And I'm sure it's better. I'm sure we'll continue to we'll just have fun with Mercury retrograde. We will.
Okay. I did set up my new mic today. I'm just saying. Because I had bought it like weeks ago and I'm like, I forgot to set it up. And I've done all these calls and interviews and I keep forgetting. And I thought I have to set it up for today.
You're a
So,
risk taker for setting it up today, but that's fun. You got to live life like that sometimes. I find that, like you said, I don't have a lot of problems with Mercury in retrograde. It's within reason for me. I'll go, oh yeah, yeah, it can happen, or oh yeah, yeah, maybe it's like a little bit more, and I just kind of go, okay, and life goes on. I know that I don't have a lot of difficulty with Mercury in my chart. I know that I have a lot of trines. I only have one square with Jupiter. That's about it. I have a bunch of trines. So I'm sure that helps.
yes.
What do you think helps for you with the you have the natal retrograde? Do you have other trines? How do you feel? Or is it truly the philosophy of no expectations?
Well, first of all, I have Mercury in Aquarius. So,
Oh, yes.
I'm used to either saying something that like that just comes out of my mouth, and it's an air sign. So I do well with that. The other thing is um, it's conjunct my sun. My Mercury's conjunct my sun, and it trines several planets. It squares several planets. It's aspected 6 ways to Sunday. I just want to say I have trine squares, I and an opposition to it, and a conjunction. So I have many different aspects to it, but I believe it's mostly because it's an air sign, and I like when things like go different. Like for me, I go into overdrive. So I don't know if it affects me as badly. Well, that car did. So that car, I was not getting back in that car.
That's
You know,
overdrive, yeah.
yeah, that was like, I ended up selling the car. I even paid someone to sell it because I was not getting back in that car. At the time, I thought it was jinxed. I'm not kidding. I
With
thought
the
it was,
bridge, I would think too. Yeah.
I mean,
Oh my
there were
goodness.
other cars and it pulled the side off of my car. No other car, my car.
Like a magnet. So with the shadow, what is Mercury retrograde shadow that it has to leave to completely be done with the energy?
So when Mercury goes back to the original point, so Mercury, I mean, it's an illusion. Retrogrades are an illusion. If you were standing on the sun, which we couldn't do, you wouldn't see the retrogrades. It's from the vantage point of Earth. So
Hmm.
you've got Earth and it's moving at a certain pace. And say, Neptune is moving much slower, but when Earth passes it, it looks like it's retrograding and going backwards, right? Mercury is the closest planet. So when we pass Mercury, Earth, it looks like the planet's going backwards, right? So it's an illusion. That's number one.
Wow.
But how we experience it. So basically, what was your question?
Oh, I was just started getting into how the retrogrades are an illusion, and my mind kind of,
Me
blew.
too. I went there with
Um,
you.
the question was about the shadow of the retrograde. Like for instance, Venus's shadow is until October 7th. That's a tremendous amount of time from when it stops in a couple of, on the
Uh,
5th in August, right? Is it the 3rd or the 5th when it stops?
I believe it's the third. It's the
Okay,
third.
that makes
September
sense.
3rd.
That makes
Yeah.
sense.
So the shadow period is the time when Mercury returns. I mean, when Venus or Mercury or whichever planet returns to the original point it retrograded. So Venus will return on. You said it was October 5th to the original point. I'm not sure what
October
that date is.
7th.
October
October
7th,
7th.
that original date. So it will return to that original date. And then Venus is direct. And again, with Venus retrograde, you can have surgery as long as it's not cosmetic because you never
Hmm.
know what's going to happen. Now, I would not have surgery under a Mercury retrograde because I've had friends who've had the wrong shoulder operated on. And during a Mars retrograde, that rules knives and surgery. I would try everything I could not to have surgery during a Mars retrograde. I mean, sometimes you have to, but I would try.
Wait, so that's a question that I have. You said Mars rules knives and surgery, so wouldn't you? Oh, during a Mars retrograde, never mind. I was like, wouldn't you want to? Never mind. Okay, never mind. Yes. I was thinking backwards. I was thinking very retrograde-y.
Well, of course, Mercury's retrograde. Our communication is different. The way we communicate, the way we hear things, the way we feel things. I mean, well, the way we think about things, the way your brain processes things is totally different. That's why computers have issues.
Yes. And you just never know. You just never know. But, no expectations, right? So, okay, we have Venus in retrograde, Mercury in retrograde. What else is in retrograde right now? You said Uranus, right?
No, Uranus is going retrograde. Hold on.
It's going retrograde.
Uranus goes retrograde on August 28th, and Jupiter goes retrograde on September 4th. So Jupiter and Venus are the two benefic planets. So just as Venus is about to go direct, Jupiter is going retrograde. Now, Pluto, Neptune, Jupiter, and Uranus, they go retrograde every year for a certain period of time. Whereas Mars goes retrograde once every 2 years. I think Venus, it's like once every year and a half. And Mercury, it goes retrograde 3 or 4 times a year. And most people know Mercury retrogrades because they're annoying. I'm just going to say that.
Yeah.
They're annoying.
They happen enough and they're annoying. What do you feel about when there's the different phases of Venus? Like I've learned about, the evening star versus the morning star with how Venus appears in the sky. What does that represent as well when the retrograde comes into effect of how it changes?
So you're looking at two different things. One is
I really am.
Yeah. You're talking about Hellenistic astrology, which is ancient astrology with the morning star and the evening star. And according to Hellenistic astrology, based on where certain planets are, they can fully have their joy. Right? So they're in a state of joy. It doesn't take into account, I don't believe, that the Hellenistic astrologers did not take into account that time the retrogrades. So this is where a planet experiences joy. So, and the most joy in your chart. So say you have Venus in Taurus, which is a very good position, and say it's an evening star, it's not as happy as if it were a morning star. Then it would rejoice with joy. And if you have, say, Venus in Aries, which is not an ideal position because it's a very masculine, it's aggressive, it would be more joyful as a morning star rather than an evening star. Like it would be detriment if it were an evening star. Does that make sense?
It does. So you mentioned if it's Venus in Taurus, it's exalted because that's its like normal sign. But Venus in Aries, so why is that considered so bad? Wouldn't it be just like a different way of expressing oneself? And maybe there would be more, I guess, misunderstanding sometimes because it's like kind of opposite how Venus would do so. And is it just more challenging? Why is it considered sometimes a bad placement? Because of the challenge only?
Well, I really shouldn't use the term good or bad. It's more challenging. So Venus is about love, beauty, femininity. It's about so it's about those things. It's about money and wealth. When you look at Mars about war, aggression. It's how we exert our energy. It has to do with anger. When you combine the two, Venus has a hard time expressing its femininity. So some people who have Venus in Aries might live their lives like an alley cat because they have a hard time accepting that love, and they have to keep going out again and again to experience what love feels like, unless you have a planet like Saturn conjunct it, and that would really quiet that Venus in Aries down.
Okay. So when you say like an alley cat, it's what we sometimes say belonging to the streets.
Well, what I'm
That's
saying
that's the, that's the updated. That's the
okay,
updated lingo.
belongs to someone who likes to have a funky good time.
Fucking good time, groovy time. Um, so wow, okay, that would express its. Got it. Okay, that's how to express itself. And what if, let's say, someone has Cancer and Mars on the flip side, or like Libra and Mars, like a feminine placement for their Mars? How would that go?
So Cancer is a feminine placement, Libra's a masculine placement. They're both cardinal
Okay.
sign, Libra's an air sign. And Libra rules Venus, but let me talk about Cancer first. So Cancer
Please,
has a hard
yes.
time because when you think about the way a crab moves from side to side. And Mars and Cancer, it's the same thing like having Venus in Aries. It has a hard time because Mars is about emotion, right? It's also action because it's cardinal, but when someone's Mars is in Cancer, their emotions can come out aggressively, or
Hmm.
they might not say anything because they're living as their crab self, like they're taking everything in, and then they'll just let it rip, or they would come at you sideways. I mean, and also again, it depends how it's active, it's aspected, like what planets are affecting it. But it's a very difficult position. Now, with Mars in Libra, again, that's another, even though it's a masculine sign, it's difficult because it confuses the person because Libra rules beauty. But, you know, with there's two rulers of Venus. One is Taurus, that's Earth. So that's good food, good home, good sex. With Libra, it's more about literature and art and like appreciating. It's like the intellectual beauty, like like looking at things, analyzing them, not necessarily feeling them. And when you combine that with Mars, they could bounce back and forth. And I'm sorry about that reverb. I keep hearing it. But it keeps
Okay.
bouncing back and forth.
Like the reverb.
Well, where, they have a hard time, like, because Libra's always looking for balance. When you think about it, it's the two scales. So if they become too aggressive with what they're trying to do, they're out of balance. But again, Libras always create imbalance to find balance, which is the dichotomy about them, because you can't find if you're balanced unless you're creating imbalance in your life. That's why Libras really like to be in relationships, so they know where they stand in the world or in their home.
Even though it's such a good placement, that sounds so messy in itself, right? To like figure out where you stand and have the diplomacy, but the scales are always rocking. But it's such a normal thing for Venus to do. It still sounds so rocky, even though it's so harmonious.
What I say about Libras is a Libra will take a poll of what everybody thinks they should do, and then they'll do what they were going to do in the first place anyway. But they want to hear what everybody thinks, and then they're just gonna, like I say to some of my Libra friends, this is the fourth time you've asked me in a month. I said, you're just going to do what you're going to do. And this one friend of mine goes, I know, but I just need to hear what everybody thinks about it. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. Whereas I have
Whatever they need.
Yes,
Okay.
I have Mars in Aries, so I just steam ahead.
Do it.
Yeah, I might not even think about it. I just do it.
Yes. Yes. And that's why it works so wonderfully, because they go together. Makes sense. Um, yes. So I want to rewind the clock a little bit, and I want to go into how you found astrology, and what really made you go, okay, this is for me. Rather, you might have had an experience, but what made you kind of go at the end of the day after maybe months or years? Okay, this is for me. Absolutely.
So I was dating a woman who could walk into any bar and guess someone's sun sign. And I said to her, "How are you doing that?" And she said, "I read this book." And so I have Aries rising, Mars in Aries. I'm very competitive. And I wanted to be able to do that too, because it was getting a lot of attention, right? So I read the book and I couldn't do it. And I thought, So I thought, I just need more education. I have a Sag moon. I just need more education. So I started taking classes so that I could do these bar tricks. I still can't guess someone's sun sign, I will tell you. But at a certain point, I think what I did was I got together a group of about 15 friends, and we were taking classes twice a month. I put the group together. I found the teacher who lived in Connecticut, and we were in New York, and I realized that I had a talent. But at that point, I had a huge real estate career, and it was more fun and games for me rather than, I didn't really consider becoming an astrologer. I never really had an aha moment, but I realized the more I studied it, the more I loved it. So I used to call it my hobby.
Yeah.
But I would do quite a few charts a month.
I mean, it just was part of your life consistently, no matter what. And I think that is a more positive way to come into it. This is what makes me happy. This is what gives me joy, rather than it's a labor. It's a pure labor.
Totally, totally. Do you hear that hammering?
Yes.
I'm so sorry, because they've been good all morning. They're still doing the
Okay.
repiping project, but I apologize. Hopefully you can edit that out.
It's like in the back. I consider it music, it just builds the ambiance. It's all good.
I started taking classes, going to conferences. This became my full-time hobby in the quest to do this bar trick.
So did you kind of, I guess, connect to people's moon signs, or what did you start to gel with rather than the sun bar trick, sign bar trick?
In my chart, my moon is the highest planet in it. So what I tend to connect with people's emotions. And about 10 years in, I walked into a bar with another friend one day, and I had my ephemeris, and I guessed someone's sun sign, of course, wrong. And I said, "Wait a minute, when were you born?" And she told me, and I looked it up, and I'm like, "I guessed your moon sign." So then that night we walked around and I asked people a couple questions, and I realized I was guessing everyone's moon sign, and had been for all those years, because I don't necessarily connect to them as who they are as an individual, but more of where they are emotionally, which I think goes to, where I ended up with my psychic abilities and mediumship.
Do you find that you can guess someone's moon sign if, let's say, within their life that they had a lot of difficulty expressing themselves, or they haven't come into their emotional maturity or confidence? How do you connect with that regardless of where they are at within themselves?
I don't believe I do it that way. I ask them a couple of questions. I feel into their responses, and then I typically guess. So for instance, I met someone, and he told me he had a Virgo moon. And I said, no. I said, "You have a Libra moon," because I asked him a couple questions, and I said, "You have a Libra moon?" He said, "No, I don't. I have a Virgo moon." I said, "When were you born?" He was 0 degrees, 10 seconds, Libra moon. but someone else had
Wow.
read his chart and it was a Virgo moon. So I had asked him several questions, and based on that, he was like, wow, how did you do that? I go, well, based on the way you answered the questions. I said, Virgo moons tend to have a little bit of insecurity in them. Well, depends on the Virgo moon, but there is some insecurity, and he didn't have it. And he had more of, he wanted everyone to get along. I mean, the feeling was that he wanted everything to be peaceful and everyone to get along. Turned out he did have Virgo rising, which he didn't know.
Mm. Wow. When someone's like, let's say 29 degrees or 0 degrees, they're on a cusp. Do they, I mean, in this case, you answered it, they're still true to whatever sign they're in.
I
Or
don't
do you
believe
find,
I don't believe in
oh, go
cusps.
ahead. Okay.
I don't believe in cusps because you either are or you're not. So at 29 degrees, that's a pivotal point. It's a pivotal lifetime, but you're still whatever that sign is. Typically, the reason I feel people talk about cusps. So I'm an Aquarian and I have Mercury in Aquarius, but I have Venus in Capricorn. They could be picking up some of that Venus in Capricorn, right?
Right.
So, especially if your sun and Mercury are different signs, people can pick up that other sign, or your sun and your moon, if they're different signs, you pick up those differences. So I don't believe in cusp. I've done many people's charts where they were 20, like this medium I knew said he was a Scorpio. I said, you're not, you're a Libra. He was 29 degrees, 58 seconds Libra.
Oh, wow.
But he had Mercury in Scorpio, he had Venus in Scorpio, he had Mars in Scorpio. So he appeared to be a Scorpio, but I could tell he was a Libra. So I don't know what other astrologers believe in. That's just me.
That's a good distinction. And so let's say with ascendant and descendant lines or, MC or IC, if something's touching one of those sensitive points, do you fall on the rule of, oh, it's on the axis rather than it's in, the first house versus the 12th house or the 6th versus the 7th and so on and so forth?
Anywhere you hit, if you're close, like within a degree or two, depending upon the planet of an access point, I look at it. But usually you'd look at the first, the fourth, the seventh, and the 10th house, as those access points. You would say, like my moon is 2 degrees away from my midheaven, but it's in my 9th house, not my 10th. So I don't say it's on an access point. I just say it's conjunct my midheaven.
So if someone's in the 12th house, right? Let's say their sun's in the 12th house, but it's really close to their ascendant line. How would you go about really understanding who they are, if it's so close to their first house per se?
Well, they would, whatever sun sign they are, they would be very Piscean, and it would be conjunct their ascendant, but I wouldn't look at it as, so when you have a planet next to an access point, that planet gets like, it gets energized. It's not the same energy if it's in the 12th house, the 3rd house, the 6th house, and the 9th house. It's not energized in the same way. So if her sun was in the 1st house conjunct her ascendant, that would be very energized.
So like 29 degrees just wouldn't cut it in the 12th house. It would have to be in the 1st house, maybe like a 1 degree.
I think
or
you're
0 degrees.
So it depends what house system you're using. If you're talking about whole sign house systems, which I believe you're talking about, that is a different system. I'm talking about the Placidus house system. With whole sign house systems, it would fall somewhere in the house, and it could be conjunct. You're combining Hellenistic with modern astrology right now.
I'm probably my philosophy, I'm just bridging over things. Yeah, I'm probably just bridging over a bunch of things.
But 29 degrees is very important. 0 degrees is very important. And access points, no matter what degree, are very important. Any planets conjunct an axis point are very important. It doesn't matter what degree they are.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Within astrology, when did you find that you wanted to make a career out of it? So you knew that it was for you. When did you start building your business? When did you start going, okay, like I want to have this be my career now?
So what happened was in about, I think it was 2018, I was looking at my chart, my natal chart, and transits and progressions. So progressions are for every year you live, your chart progresses one day. So I was looking at my progressions and the transits, which are the planets in the sky, to my natal chart. And I realized Uranus, which is dramatic change. My sun had gone into Taurus, in my progressions, and it was crossing my second house of finances. At the same time, transit Uranus was crossing my second house of possessions and personal money. And I realized that I had an executive search firm that if I didn't either make it totally different because it's Uranus and do something like on the, like on the internet or on, do something on the air or something totally different, that I was going to lose it because something suddenly was going to happen. So I decided that I was going to sell my company by October 2020, which is what I did. I had 3 offers on my company, and that I was going to become a full-time astrologer. And that's what I did.
So by the grace of your own chart, you're like, it's time to transition.
Yes, it was time. It was a big kick for me to transition. And everything just worked according to plan. So it was really perfect.
Where do you find you have the most fun within readings, like someone's natal, synastry, or transits?
Predictive.
So transits then, or a mixture probably.
It's more of a mixture. I really like predictive, where people are going, but I also get a great pleasure out of telling people things that they knew, but confirming things for people when I'm doing, what I like it all. When I'm doing natal charts, when I tell people and they're like, how do you know that? I go, well, it's in your chart, so I like doing things like that. I don't know how much of it I do via astrology and how much I do it because I'm a psychic. Sometimes I feel like I use the glyphs like tarot cards.
Right. Yeah, that's how I feel with numerology. Yes. My brain will switch on in a different way, and I go, "Oh, I'm inspired by," versus the verbatim of the rule for, right, with you astrology, or for me numerology. So I hear you. It's very fun like that. Where did then psychic mediumship start coming into your readings and your developments? So you met with a reader and you had a friend who had a bar trick for astrology. How did then psychic mediumship come in?
Well, it's interesting because I would never say that I was psychic my whole life, but I had strong intuition, like very strong intuition, where I at one time worked directly for Jeff Bezos, where he yelled at me that they're not going to run Amazon by my intuition. And what I had said turned out to be true, 6 months later, and he just looked at me and went, wow. But I wouldn't have called it that. I would have called it, I used to say I have good gut. Like I could hear when I was recruiting, I could hear someone's voice on their voicemail. And I'm like, you're my hire. So that is psychic ability, to hear someone's voice. People used to say, if you want a search done fast, give it to Iris, or she'll look at a list. I had another person who worked for me, used to look at a list, and he would make the fewest amount of calls too. He would call 3 people and one of them would be the hire, whereas other people would have to dial and dial. So basically,
That makes sense.
so I had done a reading for a client in October 2020, and I had said to him, I said, are you being haunted? At the time, I said, by ghosts at night? And he said, yes. How do you know? I go, well, I see it. You've got all these aspects coming up. I said, in your sleep, right? He goes, yes, they come to me. He goes, I've started drinking because I can't.
Is Neptune involved? Is Neptune involved in this?
Neptune was involved, yes.
Okay.
And he said, I can't sleep. He said, I just have started drinking. I go, that's not good. And I flippantly said, there are classes you can take to learn how to control those abilities. And he's like, oh, great. So I get off the phone and I'm turning off my computer and I'm thinking, how do you know there are classes? Like, I've never seen any classes. Like, you're making this stuff up and you send them off with this and you're making it up. So I get online and I'm looking, and I find all these teachers and I see Lisa Williams, who has a school, and she looks very reputable. So I'm like, she looks reputable. So I take a link, email it to him. I'm like, here is a school that looks really good for you. I'm sure she can help you. I go to bed. And I hear this voice, I'm reading, and I hear this voice that says, take that class. And I look around and I'm like, okay, I'm going crazy. The voice kept escalating and escalating until I put on headsets. I was listening to music. It could get past the music.
You can't avoid it.
You would have what?
I said you can't avoid it.
I couldn't avoid it. So I got out of bed at 11:30. This is important. And I signed up for the class. And it was an expensive class. And I hit send at 11:57 p.m. And the next day I called a dear friend of mine. We used to take a lot of classes together. I go, we're going to become psychics and mediums and sign up for this class.
Put on your vest. We're going.
I go, we're signing up. Well, we did a lot of healing work together and healing classes and energy work. And, it was up our alley. So she calls me back a half hour later. She goes, registration closed at midnight. I had sent at 11:57. I go, what? She goes, I could take it, but it's double the price. And I'm not paying double the price. I'd have to sign up for each class individually. And I thought, wow, even though at that point, I don't know if I necessarily believed in guides, I was guided, like screaming at me. I thought I was going out of my mind.
No, hey, yeah, you can't avoid what is inside of you. You can't avoid it. And the spirit world will make sure of that as well.
So that's how I ended up with Lisa Williams and meeting you.
Yeah. And, now you are a level 4 certified spiritual advisor. And so that takes a lot of time. That takes a lot of dedication. How many months did you work towards that level of certification?
At the time, it was 9 months, and I was taking classes 3 nights a week. Plus, I was behind the 8 ball because there were a lot of experienced psychics and mediums in the class. So Lisa would say you had to do 3 to 5 readings a week, and I would do 10 to 15 because I felt I had to catch up. Now, this was during COVID, and I had sold my company. So it was perfect for me because it was during the worst time of COVID where I had to be home. I was meeting all these new people on Zoom, practicing with people. There was a whole new community. And, it really worked for me very well.
Absolutely. You got to throw your entire self into it. And what did you find with doing so many readings and having such a hyper fixation on your development?
That the more you practice, the better you get. And the more I honed in my skills, like people, you need that natural talent. Although Lisa believed she could teach anyone to, and I believe that too. But the more I practiced, the better I got. Before I went into testing, I did 30 readings in 5 days because I wanted when people sat in front of me, because I had never had people sit in front of me at that point and getting tested, I didn't want them to see me sweat. That was my whole thing. And I didn't.
Overtly prepared, absolutely breeds success. Where do you find yourself in your next adventure with developing your business and being an astrologer and a psychic medium? Where do you find yourself going?
So I'm working with another medium right now, and we've come up with a system to help release triggers that block us from living full lives. So, for instance, I got rid of my trigger of anxiety, and it was a real trigger for me. And I am so much calmer since. It's changed me tremendously. But, like when you're with someone and you're like, oh, they annoy me so much. Why do they annoy you? If you could get rid of that trigger, you could have more energy for yourself. Carolyn May says if we have 100 circuits of energy and we're using 10, 20, 30 on someone else being upset or thinking about them or whatever, those are circuits of energy we can't use on ourselves. So I'm working on that right now, besides all the other things I do.
Calling back our energy on different levels. What is the course if people or the workshop that you're putting on that people can be a part of every week? Because I know it's a weekly offering.
Yes, it's weekly until I think Wednesday, the 13th, September 13th, and it's free right now. It's called Steps to Enlightenment.
And what time is that where people can be a part of it?
It's 2 p.m. Pacific time.
And that's today going on too as well, yes?
It'll happen today. Yes, it'll happen today. And the workshop run about an hour. And right now what we're doing is we're testing, because as we test, we tweak the program. Like we want to come up with new situations so that we can think of everything. But between us, like removing our triggers, we've come up with a lot of situations like illness, why people get ill, or why I got ill, why my friend got, like why people's, are attached to certain things. And you'd be surprised on where it comes from. Like I'm even shocked for myself. And then
yes.
Once it's gone, it's interesting because you have so much more time and space for other things.
Yeah, you probably will feel like a different person if you blast enough or call back enough. My goodness, just so many people operate on the past or because of some person or some events that they're not really discovering who they truly are. So I can only imagine the results that you've been seeing within the workshop. I really have.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
So where can people find you on social media, your website, so people can sign up and be a part of it, or other offerings that you have? Where are the best places for people to find and contact you?
So my website is www.askirislibby.com. You can sign up for the workshops there. You could come to one or the rest of them that were going to be happening, so you don't have to commit to all of them. You can sign up for readings there. You can book a reading. You can ask me a question there. Also, I'm on TikTok, Ask Iris Libby, Instagram, and Facebook, all those places. And I pretty much post daily.
So there's always like a video, there's always an interaction. You have lots of wonderful content. I always give the guest the last word before we start to end the show. It goes by just like that. But what inspiration or what thing comes to mind that you would like to share with others to know?
Well, I want to say that there's no good or bad when it comes to astrology. there's challenges, and those challenges are for us to grow. So we all have some good aspects and some challenging aspects. And then the transits in the sky and our progressions challenge us to grow and transform to who is in our highest and best good.
May we all transform, right?
Yes.
May we all transform. And sometimes those planets help us do that. That's for sure. With that said, thank you so much, Iris, for being here with us today. AskIrisLibby.com. You can go check her out and find more of what she's up to. Everybody, we have the numerology show right after at 1 p.m. And then we have our reading show on Friday. So join us for that. Thank you again, Iris. Everybody go with love, luck, light, and don't forget to live. Take care. See you in just a little bit. Thank you, Iris.
Bye.
The truth is here and now on WLTKDB Talk Radio at WLTKDB.com.